Hello world, it's Birdo Prey 5, Qapla, and welcome to my review of Star Trek Discovery, Season 4, Episode 6, Stormy Weather. Stormy Weather, yes. Another song title, not to be confused with the Star Trek Picard title, I believe was Blue Skies. Kind of the opposite song, but not so much the opposite problem, which we'll get into. So this is it, Season 4, Episode 6. We are now in the second half of the season, and Michael Burnham decided to start at the end of the final episode at the orb that created a family tree for whatever species it was that they saved. And she decided to make her own so-called family tree. Of course, Michael is on almost every branch. Then there's a few with Spock, a few with Saru, a few with all of her friends. Tilly. I didn't notice Tilly on Michael Burnham's tree of friends. But yeah, so that's where Michael starts. Michael and Book are talking in front of her tree. And Book says, "Oh yeah, today was my dad's birthday." And Michael knows they weren't close. Book's father's dead, by the way. So Book wants to know what's our orders? What are we doing today? Did she talk to the Admiral? And she's like, yeah, we're going to go into the subspace rift today. Apparently, this DMA that they've been following, it creates a subspace rift every time it jumps in and out of subspace. And apparently, the rift is still open. So they've decided that, yeah, it's okay. Discovery can go in and check it. Now, they can't jump in because reasons. So I guess they're just going to warp in. I don't know. In the middle of all this, Zora, the Discovery's intelligent computer system, has to deliver a message, and Grudge is there. Saru and Burnham start walking down. Saru talks about how Enterprise and Voyager have had run-ins with rifts before. And so, of course, hey, Enterprise. Which Enterprise? They don't tell us. They don't tell us which Enterprise. They don't tell us which Voyager. For that matter, we're up to the Voyager J, according to what we saw. But doesn't matter. Nobody cares. It's just for our fan service anyway. And as a fan, I really couldn't give a fuck at this point. So Michael and Saru are in an elevator, turbo lift, and they're trying to talk about Zora, the computer, but of course Zora's right there. We get the crew. Zora has told the whole crew to report to stations, and it required her to say repeat for Adira. Adira just forgot to go. Apparently, it's her first bridge assignment, even though we've all seen Adira on the bridge before. Anyway, she's filling in for Linus because it's his week to whatever, go under heat lamps. It's ridiculous. This week is really Star Trek feelings or Star Trek. It's nonsense. Michael's saying the rift tears the hell out of subspace. So they're going to go to this last tear and look for industrial molecules or anything that could lead them to who created the rift. They're saying it's a crime scene and they've got to go. And we got Discovery, and Discovery can't jump this one. So Discovery, I don't know. Apparently Discovery's just there. Maybe they jumped in not too far away. They're passing through the plasma barrier. All systems are nominal. They're commencing scans. And all of a sudden, the shaking just stopped. It got very quiet. Isn't it supposed to be bumpy? Yes, it's unexpected, said Saru. And Michael says, are we inside the rift? We should be. Yeah, maybe you are. Maybe the fact that there's nothing on your screen, everything is black, you would know you're in the rift. So Zora doesn't know why she doesn't have input from external sensors. And Michael's like, can we get visuals, external visuals? And Noel's like, these are the visuals. And Saru says this is wholly inconsistent with the data with other missions. No, Saru, why don't you look at the missions where the Enterprise D went into a hole in space? I don't even know what this guy's name is. The guy who's not Bryce on the bridge. The only man who's not Bryce on the bridge. Whoever he is. He's like, this is wholly inconsistent. Space is loud. Space is loud. Space is loud. And Adira is saying it's scientifically impossible for there to be nothing out there. Okay, number one, space is not loud. It's absolutely quiet because there's no air. Volume is a function of air. But anyway, they finally decide, instead of launching a probe like the Enterprise D did, they're launching a DOT, one of those robots, one of those androids that fix the ship. Well, guess what's going to happen? Here's the smallest violin. This DOT is going to go a few thousand meters out, and then it's going to get Thanos snapped. It's going to dissipate into nothingness. And of course, it's going to scream in pain. Who programmed dots to feel pain? They're like, oh my God, it's screaming. And it is. It's honestly screaming. Why the fuck would they program a probe or a dot or a robot to feel pain? Maybe it's not really screaming, but it sounds like it's screaming. Anyway, so this all makes it very scary. Because now they realize, hey, if they fly, they could hit the same thing the dot hit, and they could all die. Michael's like, shut off the screen. There really shouldn't be anything to watch anyway. And we get a worry that subspace itself has turned toxic. Michael's like, we need answers. They've been looking for data like Johnny 5 has been looking for input for the past 5 episodes. Data, 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 data. Not data, data, but data. Cue the opening credits. Which we can luckily skip if we were watching Paramount Plus. So we get back to the bridge. Michael's given another Ensign Tal. Who the fuck is Ensign? Oh, Adira. Adira is Ensign Tal. Wait. So Saru is like, maybe we can find a way to see a way our sensors cannot scam. Light it up. So they're sending a flare, which is what they should have sent the first time. And they're going to see how long it takes to disappear. And that'll give them some data. So 4,000 meters. It took 10.3 seconds for the dot to disintegrate. 9 seconds for the flare. So math, it's going to take them 33 minutes before the edge of the whatever hits the Discovery. OO needs more power. Some bad jokes from Stamets. Book happens to come in. Says, put me to work. Let me do whatever I can do. Stamets is like, I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Meanwhile, Gray is like, Zora, why'd the captain call for red alert? And Zora's like, since you're not a commissioned officer, there's nothing you need to do. Gray's like, come on, I want to help. So, of course, Zora talks to him, and Gray's like, Zora's like, yeah, my external sensors stopped working since arriving in the rift. And Gray's like, oh, it's like you're blind. And she's like, no, I can, my internal sensors work. Anyway, so then Zora's like, no, I'm conscious. I can tell that there's, I can tell that oh my God. Oh my fucking God. Zora's going on about how very computer stuff, that there's a overpressure in this room, the oxygen's a little off here, blah, 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 you know, just nonsense stuff. But the stuff computer would have to deal with. And Gray's like, oh my God, it's like if my brain was consciously reporting every time I breathe, I'd be overwhelmed. He's like, are you overwhelmed? And Zora's like, well, it's not what a computer would normally say. I hope I don't upset you. But basically, yes. And Gray's like, no, I'm studying to be a fucking trill, whatever the fuck thing, that guardian. So that's like being a scientist and a hippie all in one. And I can talk to you on any level. Oh my fucking God. What have we come to? Gray, who didn't have a fucking body, until last week, is now giving advice to the sentient fucking 100,000-year-old computer. What could Gray fucking know that this 100,000-year-old computer doesn't? How did they go this long allowing a 100,000-year-old computer to take control of the whole fucking ship? Okay, how did they allow it in the 23rd century, in the 32nd century? How did Starfleet allow everything, the entire future of the fucking galaxy, to live on the fact that an unknown computer consciousness literally controls the most powerful ship in the entire fucking fleet? Both of them at one time asked, were they joking And there was nothing remotely funny about what either of them said. Gray wants to play a game. He says it might help Zora clear her head. You know, if you really had a head. Gray doesn't know how. Neither Zora nor Gray understand how it'll help them. And Gray's like, I don't know, but if it helps me. You know, she doesn't want to just be a passenger who hangs out in the lounge all day. So Zora, yeah, I'd love to play your game. Do we have to worry about instructions? No. I guess we'll just assume Zora implicitly knows them. So for whatever reason, OO needs more power. And Stamets says he'd have to shut down power on other sets. So Saru gives Michael a little convincing, and Michael finally aborts the mission. She's like, there's no way, we don't have enough power, we gotta get out of here. She's like, well, but we don't have any answers. And only now, when she thinks she could leave, did you honestly think, Michael, that you could just back the fuck out? How do you think you're going to get out of a fucking void where there's no fucking way to determine what way you're pointing? So Michael thought she was going to be able to back out. Now she's like, we can just jump out. She's like, Stamets, you got to jump us out of here. And Stamets is like, no, that's not safe. So Stamets is like, well, we gotta look for data. And Michael's like, well, anybody can look for data. Stamets is like, no, we might miss something if I'm not the one looking for data. So Book, who just happens to be the only other person capable of jumping the ship, was right there, and he says, I'll jump the ship. And Stamets surprisingly says, sure, I'll learn how to delegate. You jump the ship, I'll look for data. And of course, he tries to jump the ship, and it doesn't go well. Stamets calls for an abort on the ship jump. Book was hit by an energy surge. He's okay, but something's wrong. Oh, the mycelial network. It doesn't exist inside the void. They can't jump. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that where nothing else fucking exists, that the mycelial network, or whatever the fuck it's called, would be the one thing that existed? You can't fucking jump. So Book, meanwhile, got hit by an energy surge, and now Book can see his dead father. His father who died God knows when. Book can talk to him, and they have a bit of a talk. The father was very disappointed in Book. Like, why didn't you come check on me? Why aren't you go out fighting for your planet? Your planet was destroyed, and you're just sitting on someone else's ship. And he says, you should be hunting this enemy. And Book is like, you're not real. None of this is real. But just in case you are real, I love you, Dad, but go fuck yourself and goodbye forever. That's basically how his entire story goes. He tells his dad, you're not real, but if you are real, it was good to see you. You got to leave, and I'm going to go back to my life. So Book is like, I saw Leto, who's his nephew. Now I'm seeing my dead father. And he's like, am I going crazy? And Dr. Yu, whatever the fuck his name is, He's like, no. Your nephew was because of grief. This is because you were struck by lightning. So you'll be okay. The real medical officer, chief medical officer, says what he means is you'll be good eventually. Now science, says Stamets. Whatever energy passed through Book left trace amounts in the brain. Once we finish analyzing it, we should know something about the void. What caused it, maybe even how to get out of it, or where it came from, or who made it. So Gray says to Zora, Zora has a cool name. And Zora says, thank you. On Earth and Baku and some other world, it means new day. So on 3 different planets, the name means the same fucking thing? How is that possible? Gray says, I've chosen my name too. You know what? You chose your gender, so why not choose your name? Why not throw your back on the entire fucking history? Why not everybody choose their name? Right? That makes sense. Why is it fair that a kid's parents gets to choose their name? That's not fair, right? Everybody should choose their own fucking name. Once they become of age, they can choose their name, they can choose their gender. That makes all the sense in the world. And then nobody can tell you what you want to do. So Gray is talking to the computer, and the computer finally has the power to realize, hey, I can detect outside sensors all of a sudden. There's something on the hull. Oh my God, there's going to be a hull breach somewhere. So Gray has to convince the computer to tell Michael. So the computer tells Michael. Michael says to somebody on the bridge, tell our closest person. Our closest person turns out to be the chief medical officer, who proceeds to run to the area Michael tells her to run to, who then proceeds to see 4 or 5 or 6 people clearly closer than the chief medical officer was. So there was a lot other people closer than the person who was supposedly closest. The person who was closest yells to the people who were closer that they've got to get out of there. And of course, all but one does. One person is so close, they're like, I can fix it without moving. Of course, they die because they're male and they're mostly white-ish. They're Hispanic white, but they're white Hispanic. So they die. You know, if you're a male member of the Discovery crew, you should just get off the ship as soon as you can, especially if you're not gay, because there's not a hell of a lot of hope for you. So now they all feel bad that the guy is dead. Not bad enough to do anything to prevent it in the future, but they all feel bad. They're like, beam out, beam out. Why can't they beam him out? There was plenty of time to beam out. He's still alive. He's probably still alive in space. You don't die immediately after going into space. We've seen that a million times. And now Zora has to explain to Gray that Ensign Gordita or whatever was trapped. And Gray's like, it's not your fault. If you hadn't stepped in, more people would have been dead. And Zora is like, maybe. Uh, oh. Oh, well, there's 21 minutes until hull damage is critical. Michael's like, we need more options. Gray just walks onto the bridge and says, hey, Captain, it's Zora. I think she can help. She's like, I'm listening. Mayvesh, there's a trill game that Guardians teach the host. Nobody gives a shit about your fucking game. Oh. Gray said he taught the game to Zora. You mean that metaphorically? Like, no. I asked to play a game with me. It helped. She registered something on deck 17 before it breached the hull. And so Michael's like, Zora, can you explain this? And for the first time, we get to see Zora. And it's just a circle with some noise audio bars on it. So Zora was able to detect microvariants. Saru's like, greater focus creates greater awareness. Got a nice work from Michael for Gray. Zora doesn't think she can do it. Saru's like, if we can get a signal through the void, Zora can listen and find their way out. So Zora says she can't do it. So Michael's telling everybody else to brainstorm ways to get a signal through the void. Meanwhile, Book is finding his father again. The father is arguing with him about how the father's like, you should take out the amulet, the one with the blood in it. It's crazy. It's like, this is from somebody. This is you're saying I'm not here, and you're the one saying trans worms have spirits. The trans worms are all dead, Book. It's your fault. And they have quite a bit of an argument. Saru has to stand in and give a speech. Why? I don't know. I honestly don't know. So here's what they decide. They got to shut off life support. They got to shut down all this stuff so that they have enough power. So what are they going to do? Well, they're going to, I don't know. Hey, Zora, is there any record of, people existing in the transporter buffer? And she's like, yes, Starfleet has records of long-term use of the transporter buffer. You know what that's from? That's from the Star Trek episode Relics, Star Trek Next Gen episode Relics, where Scotty puts him and his friend in the transporter buffer for 70 years. Unfortunately, his friend doesn't make it, but Scotty makes it. So, based on something like that, long-term use of the transporter buffer, which, mind you, was from a 700-year-old transporter by the time we get to Star Trek Season 4 Discovery Future. That was, maybe there's other uses by then. But the point is, they don't go into the detail of how it's done. Just all of a sudden it's assumed Zora knows how to do it. So they don't make sure anything's ready. They just tell everybody, hey, everybody, start beaming into the transporter buffer. Hurry it along. Of course, everyone on the fucking ship and their father or mother or whatever wants to have a long goodbye scene. And we'll just assume they all happened at the exact same time. Because if they didn't, we'd still be waiting for everybody to be ready to beam away. And they're all supposed to beam in groups. Because you don't, God forbid, you should beam to this transporter buffer alone. What would wouldn't you feel bad if you died in the transporter buffer and no one else was near you to go with you, I guess? It is beyond moronic. Oh, oh. So they did find something very important. They found that when the chemicals in Book's brain, guess what? Not only are they man-made, the particles in Book's brain are the clue. And Stamets says they're only found in one place. The galactic barrier! Ah! The galactic barrier. Now, they mean the outside barrier, not the central barrier, but the outside barrier, which can mean only that this thing came from outside the galaxy. So this threat is not from the Q continuum or the Iconians or anybody who ever lived in the Milky Way galaxy. This is from a different galaxy. Well, is it the what is it? The ice cream cone destroying thing. Could this be the Doomsday Machine? The Doomsday Machine we know was from outside our galaxy. Possibly. Although my guess, hey Sassy, you want to say hi to everybody on YouTube? My dog is saying hello. My guess is it's still the whale probe. My guess is it's the whale probe. And the fact that they find and they use sonar later in this episode to find their way out only increases my thoughts that this is the whale probe. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So the whole last 20 minutes of this episode is everybody getting ready to go into the pattern buffer. Everybody except Michael Burnham, who is going to stay on the bridge in an EV suit with zero life support because the captain doesn't leave the bridge. But except every time she does. Well, you know what? While it's just Michael and Zora on the bridge, it turns out it's going to get too hot. Michael will not be able to survive. So Michael tells Zora, you're going to have to be the one to wake everybody up from stasis in the transporter buffer. Zora says, of course I will. And Michael Burnham does what? Michael Burnham transports into the transporter buffer? That would be the smart thing to do. No, Michael Burnham decides to just sit in the seat and apparently burn to death. And if she burned to death, I would be so happy. But no, of course we know she's not going to burn to death, even though she's, by all the laws of physics, she should be dead. She was going to be 400 degrees over what her suit could handle. And instead, she's going to be perfectly fucking fine. Okay? Michael Burnham could have done many things. She could have, one, just transported into the transport buffer. If she's going to be dead anyway, what the fuck does it matter whether she's on the bridge or not? Her dead body isn't going to fix anything. Or how about this? since it's the bridge and since the heat is coming from the outside of the ship, she could have retreated to an interior section of the ship that surely would have been cooler. Okay? You don't have to be on the bridge with this giant glass window where it's going to be the hottest on the entire ship. Go into the ship. Go someplace cooler. And then you could still be alive to let the people out of the transporter buffer. Or just trust Zora to do it. So she does neither, and she ends up being afraid that she's going to burn to death. But then, of course, at the very end of the episode, she's awake. The rest of the crew, Zora let the rest of the crew out of the transporter buffer by herself. They found Michael. They brought Michael to med bay, and just in time for them returning to Starfleet, Michael wakes up, and all's well. Of course, they still have to find out where this thing is going and where it came from. They're really not any closer to solving the problem, except for the fact that they now know this is from outside the galaxy. Meanwhile, the entire time, Michael and Zora were talking. Zora is scared. Zora's got emotions now. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Oh, so this is how this episode gets its title. Michael says, I need some help. And Zora's like, I can sing you a song. And Michael's like, sure, sing me a song. So Zora then goes in and sings her rendition of Stormy Weather. She sings Michael's Stormy Weather as Michael is dying from the heat. As Michael is burning up and dying from the heat, Zora is singing Stormy Weather. I can't imagine what they had to plant in the ground to grow this fountain of garbage, a fountain of sewage. But it's paying off. They put it in the ground and they strike a giant sewage pipe every fucking week. More and more jets of sewage just pouring out of the ground. Another 1 out of 10. Another 1 out of 10. I can't give any credit when credit is not due. And it is certainly not due here, people. Qapla all. Bird out.